Imagine experiencing the beauty of heaven, only to be told you can't stay. In part one of this two-part episode of No Gray Areas podcast, we're joined by Steve and Elaine Musick with a mind-blowing story that will leave you changed. Steve takes us on a journey through his near-death experience, how he got there, what he saw, who he encountered in heaven, and how it changed him forever. Let's get started. Steve and Elaine Musick. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for being on the No Gray Areas podcast. You have an unbelievable story. Audience, I can promise you that you will be moved by this story, that you will you'll be motivated and inspired by this story and challenged by this story. Just to give them a little sneak peek into it, you had a near-death experience, Steve, where you actually went to heaven and had a conversation with Jesus. Now, I'm going to leave our listeners hanging there. We're going to get to that, but I want to back up Steve and Elaine.
Hide that fastball.
Yeah, hide that fastball. You don't want to miss that part of the story, trust me. But let me back up, though, and just so we can understand a little bit of who you are, your origin stories. So, Steve and Elaine, kind of back up and bring us up to that point when that happens, because you were 22 years old. Is that correct?
20.
Yeah. 20 years old. So yeah, bring us up to that. Steve, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about what your childhood was and how that impacted this event that you had when you were in your 20s.
So I grew up in a Christian household, but my upbringing and my raising would be characterized as violent and vacant.
Violent and vacant.
And my brother is non-diagnosed bipolar. And he was a gifted, nationally ranked athlete. Mm-hmm. And so he's an older brother. And for us, we were latchkey kids. And when we got home from school, it was terror time.
So the violence was primarily because of your brother?
Brother.
Yeah. And how much older was he?
2 years.
2 years older.
But it really didn't matter. I mean, he was...
Well, growing up, 2 years is a big difference in just size and everything.
Huge difference. Yeah. And he was, part of being a parent of somebody that's non-diagnosed bipolar, he was a challenge. Mm-hmm. And so because of his athletic prowess, our living room looked like a shrine to my brother. Mm-hmm. I mean, trophies and medals and articles in the newspaper and national magazines and all of that. And I grew up unknown.
Yeah.
I didn't show up. I'm invisible. So
it's
I was
almost like who's Steve?
I was a brainiac.
Yeah.
Spent all my, getting in a place where you had to stay after school.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually a good thing.
Yeah.
I stayed in school and hang out at the library, and I don't have to go home.
This go on all through elementary, junior high, and high school?
Elementary, junior high.
Yeah. So you, by the time, and we're leading up to this story then, by the time this happens to you when you're 20 or 22, where are you just personally in life, like mentally, spiritually, physically? Where are you?
I'm a dutiful Christian. I accepted Christ at age 7, was Orthodox Episcopalian, so we did the catechism and was, anointed by the bishop and did that whole thing. But it was kind of like buying a ticket to a movie, and I got the ticket but never got in to get the show. I didn't really understand the relationship.
Wait! That's such a great analogy. Dig into that a little bit more. So you're saying it's like you bought a movie to the show, but you never got in the show. What do you mean by that?
Well, being a brainiac, I understood all the rules, but I never really understood that there's a relationship as well.
Yeah.
So I bought a ticket, but I never really got to see the show.
So up until this experience that we're going to talk about, you didn't really have a what we might call an intimate relationship with God or with Jesus. It was just you were following a checklist of rules.
Right. And
which is what religion becomes for most people, right?
Well, one of the reasons I subscribed to that was I was hoping that church would give me a respite from life. And it turned out not so much.
Yeah. Wow. So Elaine, how about you? What was your story? Are you Colorado? You're in Colorado now.
Born and raised, I'm a third-generation native.
Wow. Okay. So, Elaine, are you from Colorado?
I am. I'm a native as well.
Wow. You guys never. I just did a 3-week road trip through Colorado with my wife this summer because our in-laws just moved there. Unbelievable, incredible, like the $1 Million Highway and going through. Oh, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So I can see why you didn't ever leave that
It's like,
place.
oh, no.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Elaine, tell us a little bit about your story.
So I grew up in a different kind of a household. I'm the only daughter. I had 2 brothers, both older. So there's between my oldest brother and I, there's 10 years. And
Okay.
my other brother and I were 6 years. That brother passed away several years ago, unfortunately. But we were a close family. We're a very small family. We don't have a lot of cousins and all that kind of stuff. So did not have any of that. I did have a church life, I would say. Grew up in the Methodist church, but it was really my brothers and I would go to church on Sunday. My parents didn't because my dad was a musician. He always had a performance or a rehearsal on that day. So my mom would stay and cook, and we would go to church and come home and eat, and he would go off and do his job. So it wasn't a highly spiritual upbringing.
Yeah.
But my parents were involved in the church as they were growing up and were supportive, and it just wasn't a very overt religious or spiritual relationship. But it was a very happy household.
Yeah. So you would
thoroughly
say you
enjoyed
had
it.
a good childhood.
Absolutely.
Like a really,
Absolutely.
probably 2 older brothers and your older one being 10 years apart. You were probably really protected between your parents and 2 older brothers.
True. And it was truly that whole thing of they could tease me, we could have, arguments as all kids do. But if anybody else stepped in, they were my biggest protector.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like that with a lot of healthy siblings, I think,
Yes.
right? Where they have the fighting amongst themselves sometimes if it's in a healthy way, unlike your Steve's. But then it's like 2 dogs fighting. You do not want to get in between them
No.
because they'll both turn on you, and that's what you're describing.
Exactly.
How interesting, though, to hear your stories. I just think of the difference between your story with older brothers who were protective and doing what older brothers should, and your story, Steve, with an older brother who was abusive in a lot of ways. So you had 2 different experiences with older brothers.
Very much.
So do you know each other by the time this event happens?
Yes.
Then I'm pointing at this book. Our audience is watching
yes.
one, and what I'm pointing at is I'm pointing at the book you wrote, Life After Heaven. So you guys knew each other?
Yeah, we met each other in college. Yay, college.
Yeah. Okay. In Colorado?
Yes.
Yes,
University of Colorado, go Buffs.
Yeah.
Go Buffs. And she lived right down the hall in a co-ed dorm.
Yeah. Okay.
And wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those were your first words when you saw her?
It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I am liking college.
Yeah.
This is worth the tuition that I'm paying. I'm telling you.
That's great. Yeah. So you guys know, when does this happen? You've been in college about 2 years then when this happens?
I graduated high school at 17, went to work for a year, saved up enough money for 1 year of college.
Yeah.
And ran out of money right on schedule.
Yeah.
And so we met first year of college.
Yeah. Right after you said, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yes, there's a chance here. Well, I never dated. I was a social dwarf. So I never dated in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't have a grid for that. It wasn't very good there.
Yeah. You probably saved yourself some heartache.
Yeah. Well, it was hard. Some girls would warm up to me just so they could get close to my brother, who was a hunk.
And the phenomenal athlete.
And all that.
Yeah.
So at that time, if you were not enrolled in higher education, you had to register for the draft. And my draft lottery number was 16. And
tell our listeners that don't know what that means.
It could have been 256,489.
Yeah.
Mine was 16.
Do they go in order?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it means
you're
going.
You're going.
You're going.
You know it.
And so the choice was you could either wait and get drafted or you could join.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a heartful decision to join the Navy.
Do you recall why the Navy?
Born and raised in Denver, Colorado, had never seen the ocean.
So you're like, if I'm going to do this, there's going to be some adventure in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And odds-on favorite, if you're going to be in the Navy, you're going to be on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
and you could do a scholarship at sea. I mean, an aircraft carrier is like a traveling city.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could get almost a complete undergraduate diploma in your 4 years enlistment.
Yeah.
And
so
that's,
you're seeing this as an
I thought,
opportunity.
okay, I'm going to make the best of this. And that was sort of my plan.
Yeah. So where does your plan go stray a little bit?
In boot camp, it was really the first time that I could actually be me. I was no longer invisible, and I no longer had the baggage. I could actually be me.
You know what's interesting about that, though? Can I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
What's interesting about what you're saying, because I have 2 kids that are in the military, one that was, and she's out now, and then my son is still in the Marine Corps, that most often people go in the military and they say they feel invisible, right? Because you're all wearing the same uniforms, you all have the same haircuts, but you had the opposite. Because of what you came from, you actually feel like I'm being seen now, like I'm my own person.
Yeah.
How interesting.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it. The second week of boot camp, they sit you in a big conference room and they test you academically. They're doing academic, fill in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And in the third week, there was a group of Navy SEALs that said, "Hey, if you guys want to try out for SEALs, Aqua Center, 6:00.
Yeah.
Be there."
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there at lunch eating, and I'm thinking, that sounds like fun. I'd like to try that.
Yeah.
So there were 900 guys in the battalion. There were 30 guys that showed up at the Aqua Center.
And you're one of them?
And I'm one of them. And at the end of a 2-hour gauntlet of brutality, there are only 3 guys left. And I remember clear as a bell, one of the SEALs laid out warm clothes, because they throw you in a pool and they make you swim and they go through all. And then the last challenge is this is North Chicago in December, fully wet. They throw you out on the grinder and make you run 1 mile in under 6.
Wow.
And so we come back in and we're freezing.
Almost hypothermic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's nice warm clothing, their utilities, they've got all laid out. And all of a sudden, these rough, hardened SEALs become warm, sensitive, real people. And I remember one of the big burly SEALs yanks me up off of the concrete, and he says, "You got sand, sailor." He says, "Now, this is just a token of what it's like in Coronado, but you are eligible. You qualify to become one of us. If you make it, and I think you have what it takes, you'll have joined the best family ever."
Wow.
And what went through me at that time was I never really understood family.
Wow.
And I would really like that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So the next week, I get called into recruit training headquarters. So the guy in charge there is a captain, a line officer. He's rotated to recruit training. And I walk in and I think I must have done something really bad, because there's all kinds of gold and stripes and, stars.
And you usually don't stand in front of those.
It's like, and I'm standing there in utilities.
Yeah.
I mean, and I stood in front of the yeoman, who's the secretary there, and I said, I'm Seaman Recruit Music. I'm here to see the captain. And she just went like this. She just pointed. She didn't even say anything.
Yeah.
She didn't even hardly look up. She just pointed. So I walked in, and my company commander, he's in the room too, and he's at absolute attention. And I'd never not seen that.
Yeah.
And so I quickly snapped to attention. And the captain's got my records in front of him. And he looks up at me and he says, in a classic Navy line officer way, he says, "What in the hell are you doing in recruit training?" He said, "Your test scores are off the charts." And I told him, well, I went to a year of college, ran out of money, draft lottery number 16. That's how I got here. And then he flips over the page and he goes, "And SEALs?" He says, "I hope you play football." He said, "You look like a linebacker to me."
Yeah.
And he said, I wanted to let you know that after your A school across the railroad tracks, he said, you're not going to the fleet. He said, you're going to Annapolis. We have a billet for certain people like you to go to the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
So I'm
and
walking.
That is huge. I mean, don't you need to, like, to go to Annapolis, don't you need like a senator's signature, or in this case, like you got?
It's unheard of. So I'm walking out of there with my company commander, and he turns to me and he said, I can't believe I'm doing this. He said, I'm going to end up at some point in time saluting your ass.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, but for the next 8 weeks, he said, your ass is mine. And I'm thinking, there is a God.
Yeah.
I'm now seen.
Yeah.
I have opportunity. I'm capable.
Yeah.
I'm all of those things. And so I make a phone call to my beloved, and I said, you can't believe what just happened.
Are you guys dating at this point, or are you married?
No, dating.
Okay, you're dating.
Betrothed. I won the lottery.
Yeah. As soon as you said, wow, you knew you're not letting this get away.
Like, oh, man, don't let me mess this up.
By the way, congrats, because you told me before we turned the mics on, 47 years of marriage now. So you did all right, Steve.
Hey, it's a gift.
Yeah.
I describe her in public as an angel with skin.
That's
and she
beautiful.
always goes, no, I'm not. That's my view.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
So the very next week, they summoned everybody at recruit training into a big indoor hangar that they use for physical exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And they put everybody in recruit training there. There was like almost 3,000 people there. And they had corpsmen running up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in the military, so you get the drill. It's like, okay, you're getting inoculated for something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the United States government was panicked about a swine flu epidemic, very similar to what we just went through in the COVID.
Yep.
And they created a swine flu vaccine, and they needed a test bed for the vaccine.
This is sounding really familiar.
And so they inoculated everybody. They inoculated everybody at recruit training, everybody at the A school, everybody on state side, everybody on the hospital side, and everybody at Fort Sheridan, which is the soldier fort a little bit south of us.
Mm.
And I had an allergic reaction to the swine flu vaccine. And it's the first time since World War II that Great Lakes Regional Hospital was full to a divert status. I mean, it looked like triage. It was just...
So there's a lot of people who were having
awful
reactions.
It was terrible. Now, I was one of the worst.
Yeah.
So I recovered out of that, but I never got well.
Yeah.
And a couple of months later, it tells you a little bit about the fortitude that I had. A couple of months later, I'm losing ground. I'm literally drowning in my own fluids.
Mm.
And so I go to the emergency department of the regional medical center. And, it's a military hospital. It's a VA hospital. So usually it's like, take a number, take a seat.
Yeah. And then wait hours.
And the person at the front took one look at me, and I'm in I'm in a treatment area immediately. And they're doing all the normal stuff, because I literally am drowning in my own fluids. The swine flu just is overwhelming me.
Mm.
And so they started an IV, and the doctor is doing all kinds of stuff, ordering, I want this and I want that and I want this and I want that. And about half an hour later, a nurse walks in with a huge syringe, and she's tapping the syringe to get all the air bubbles out of it. I call her Nurse Rat Shed. I knew that something was about to come unglued, because the song on the radio in the emergency department where I was is playing Evil Woman by ELO.
As she's standing there
tapping the syringe. So she takes that and she puts it into my IV tube and pushes the plunger all the way in, opens up the IV, and, well, it's supposed to be the treatment for the symptoms that I'm having in the swine flu. It's supposed to dry you out. Well, I'm allergic to the treatment. And
Which
they just,
nobody knew.
I didn't
Nobody
know
knew.
that.
Yeah.
I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I go out. It's the last thing I remember.
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss a future podcast. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
She leans at me and she says, "This'll fix you right up."
As the evil woman's playing.
As the evil woman's playing. I'm thinking.
Trust me, that song still comes on the radio, and
Oh.
it usually gets changed very
Yeah,
quickly.
it's like, gives me the willies just think about it.
triggering, yeah. How long were you out? When you say you go out, is that when you went into a coma?
Yeah, 5 weeks.
So you go into a coma for 5 weeks. Prior to that, you're battling this for months, couple of months.
Yeah.
All the symptoms of this.
Yeah.
Are you in and out of the hospital?
No,
Or you're in?
I was still studying in A school. I was.
Okay, so you're trying to fight
I'm
this thing,
fighting
but
it.
you're feeling miserable, and your body's not handling fluids right.
I'm a SEAL.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let this thing get me.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, you just get overwhelmed.
So, Elaine, I want to ask you in just a moment, just so kind of catch us up on what you're thinking. So you get this call from him saying like, hey, they said that, they want to send me to Annapolis and all of this. And then boom, now he's having all these health issues and now he's in a coma. What are you dealing with, or what are you hearing? What's going on with you?
I was in college at that point in time, and I tend to get very focused on things, and my education was exactly where I was at that point in time. And, particularly with boot camp in the military, there's a lot of times when you don't hear anything. So I had no clue and was not really.
This is pre-texting from a phone days too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is,
So,
put your quarters in the.
APO,
So it could be days or weeks before you hear.
And I
really
didn't
from him.
really.
Yep.
So I didn't really have any concern. Over that. It's just, it is what it is, and I'll hear from him eventually. And so, I went doing my thing and not knowing at all what was going on.
When did you find out he was in a coma?
When he came out of it.
Oh, he was in that coma the whole 5 weeks and you didn't know?
Nope.
Wow.
The Navy was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They sent my parents a 3x5 card in a postcard, and there were 3 boxes, and it said the number top box was your son, and my name, has been killed in action. The second box is missing in action. In the third box, which was checked, has been transferred to Great Lakes Regional Medical Center, and that was it.
That's all they get.
That's all
Your
they
parents
get.
get that.
So they didn't know either.
No information.
What did they do then?
My dad was upset, angry, called everybody that he knew, and got nothing.
So they can't even get, so you don't even know he's in a coma. Your
Not at
parents don't know that you're in a coma. They just know that you're in this hospital and your dad can't even get any info.
Right.
When do they finally figure this out?
I made a telephone call from the regional medical center. My mom picked up and I said, well, this is me. And she was livid.
Livid. At the Navy that she's not getting any information. Her son just came out of a 5-week coma. Who wouldn't be? What mama? That's that you woke up the mama bear there,
exactly.
right? And it's during that 5-week period though, where you have this experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And you didn't talk about it for a long time. Is that correct?
10 years.
So you have this experience where you go to heaven and you don't tell anybody for 10 years. Elaine?
Nope.
You didn't even tell Elaine for 10 years. Why not?
Anybody that's been to heaven and not been allowed to stay has a vacancy in life that's hard to fill.
I just got goosebumps when you said that.
And when I was there, I thought I was staying. I thought this is absolutely the best place I've ever been in my life. Safe, seen, cared for. I was in a place of, it's like being inside pure joy. We live in a world that's happy. It's happy and sad. It comes in and out like the tide. In heaven comes after you. And you're inside pure joy. And so the most painful...
You're really making me excited to get there.
Well, the most painful words I've ever heard in my life from that day to this were the words of Jesus. We're sitting outside underneath a gigantic oak tree, and he's got his arm over my shoulder. And we've had 5 weeks of conversation now And he turns to me and very surprised to me, and in a very forlorn way, this hurt him to say what he said. He said, "And you can't stay." And I'm literally ripped out of heaven. And I wake up in intensive care isolation.
Like those were your last words you remember him saying.
It's the last
and
words.
You can't stay.
You can't stay. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I wake up at 126 pounds. And it looked like somebody had taken a baseball bat to me.
You had been basically told by the Navy you could be a Navy SEAL if you want to do this.
Yeah.
And now you're 120 plus.
120, and I had to learn how to walk again. It was awful. So not only do you lose heaven, but I wasn't even back where I was when this whole thing started.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah.
What do you do? If you're an Orthodox Episcopalian, you go to the priest in confession and you tell him about this great and wonderful experience.
That you went to heaven.
What's he going to do?
Yeah.
He, and I thought, I'm not going to talk about this until I actually understand it, until I figure it out. Because I didn't want people to think I'm weird.
Yeah. What would you say to skeptics? Because there would be skeptics, and maybe even some of our listeners are sitting there. You made me tear up when you started talking about heaven, by the way. Like I can't. I know we're going to get into that, and we're breaking this into two parts. And in part two, we're going to get into some of the lessons you learned from that. And man, audience, do not miss part two, because we had a brief call, and some of the things that you're going to share are just amazing. So it just makes me long to get there. But then I know you talk about this life, though. We'll get to that. But let me come back to that and just there are skeptics. We maybe even have some listeners right now going like, yeah, how do you know that wasn't just a dream? How do you know? Or I'll be honest, back in my days, I mean, through my 20s, I was teaching full-time Bible in a Christian school. And I remember saying, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I remember saying like, these people that have these near-death experiences, talking about going to heaven and hell, it happened to Paul, and he's saying it was too wonderful and he couldn't talk about it. So how can they have these experiences and talk about it? Now, I've heard enough of these stories now to realize like I was putting God in a box with that, which is really dangerous to do.
Yeah.
But speak to the skeptics maybe that are listening, that are going, how do you know that wasn't just a dream, Steve?
The mission of our lives is that heaven is closer than we think. And everyone can experience it. So the real story, the real message is that we continue to have experiences in the here and now that feel very much like heaven. And that's how I know that this was an authentic experience. And we've been at this now for 40 some odd years, and we continue to have experiences with people that feel like the hereafter. Mm-hmm. And they get it. Mm-hmm. So, there will be skeptics, and we've had long conversations with lots and lots of people. And I'm in a place where I just shrug my shoulders and say, we're about experiencing heaven here. Mm-hmm. And you can change your opinion, you can change your skepticism by having the experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm almost to the place where it's part of what the price that Christ paid on the cross, mm-hmm. that we would have the abundant life. And it's the abundant life that's what we're describing. That's what we're alluding to, because it's an experience. Yeah. It's a relationship. And so to step across that line, it's like everybody can do this. Everybody can have it.
So someone who was there and experienced you are saying that when you came back, you have experiences here that mimic what you experienced in heaven.
Yes.
That are very similar. And you're saying that heaven is closer than we think.
Yes.
We're going to really unpack that in the second, because again, this is huge. The Bible started coming really alive for me even more. And I was a preacher and a teacher for a couple of decades, but it was my early 40s when I really started, late 30s, but early 40s when I really started understanding this kingdom idea. I mean, Jesus talks about the kingdom over 150 times in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And then when I realized the story from beginning to end is about a kingdom. It starts off and it's a perfect kingdom. Heaven and earth are in perfect harmony. And then sin enters and it breaks it. But and then when Jesus teaches us to pray, he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Mhm.
So right away, it's almost like you're repeating what Jesus said, aren't you? That Jesus is saying there are kingdom experiences that you're going to have here, heaven experiences that you're going to have here. And of course, what we're all waiting for is when Jesus comes back someday,
Right.
and that heaven and earth are in perfect harmony. And you got to experience that some.
Well, and it's important to know that the experiences that we have in the here and now are not heaven to the full.
Mhm.
We don't get the full treatment, but it'll do. It'll do. It's a
Yeah.
contrast to the current culture
Yeah.
that we live in.
Yeah.
And I think the contrast is meaningful
Yeah.
and noteworthy. And I'm also in a place that says we're not supposed to experience the totality of heaven here until Jesus returns.
We're not supposed to
Uh-uh.
experience the totality of heaven.
Because
here.
that's the Tower of Babel. That's the trying to create heaven here.
Yeah.
And we never do that.
Mm.
We anticipate experiences of heaven. We never expect. Expectation is religion. That means I'm in charge and I can wield this wand of majesty anywhere I want. And that you don't do
Wow,
that.
that just is mind blowing. What you just we could do a whole podcast on that.
We serve
On
at
the
the
difference
pleasure.
between anticipation and expectation, and religion really, an unhealthy religion really leads or is based on expectation.
Yes.
Like, I can do this checklist of things, and then God will do this.
It's a formula.
It's a form.
And you mentioned earlier about putting the Father in a box.
Yeah.
And the Father loathes the idea of being contained
Yes.
in any way, shape, or form.
He's ineffable.
So we're in the place that we anticipate. So we are in a biblical way. We have all of our pots out. We have plenty of oil, and we're available in service. And anytime the Father would want to show up and guide us and encourage us in his work, we're in.
What a great way to live. Now we can't help but jump into part 2 of this, but that's okay. We're going to come back to this. But what a great way to live, to wake up in the morning, like you're saying, your pots are out, like you're collecting water, right? Like, I'm going to anticipate that maybe today I'm going to have this a heaven experience. I'm not expecting it. It may not happen, but I'm ready with my pot out.
Yeah.
To catch this and not miss that moment if it happens.
Right.
What a great way to live.
Well, and part of the anticipation is to be aware and to be looking for it rather than just, because our lives are busy. Life is busy. I was thinking about the traffic as we were coming here.
Yeah.
Things are going like that all the time, and so it's important to pay attention.
Yeah.
And that so it's that anticipating and paying attention and being ready. It's all three of those different things.
So Elaine, how does someone pay attention? Like what would someone do? Let's say for me today, you're talking specifically to me right now, audience, you're listening in, and you're going to tell Pat how to prepare for that and to watch for that. What would I do?
I think there's several different ways of looking at that. If you ever, and it's amazing when you talk to people and you say, experiencing that moment when that God was part of it. People go, I've had that before.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how to explain it. I didn't know. And it's like, hang on to that. And that doesn't mean that it's going to show up the same way every time, at all. Mm-hmm. But you start to get that sense of what it is. So be looking for it. Try not to be distracted. With everywhere you go, with everybody that you meet, there's a possibility. There's always a possibility. And so be open to that.
Again, I've got to say it again. It seems like such a great way to live, to be open and anticipating those possibilities, as you just said, Elaine.
We carry it with us everywhere we go now. So we've developed a relationship with our mail carrier. I mean, the lady that drives around in a truck and delivers our mail. And we've developed a friendship and a relationship with her. So I was out working in my front yard, and here she comes. Yesterday was a really hard day for her.
Mm.
And you can imagine, she's working for the government.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy working for the government today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I dropped what I was doing, went to her, and I said, my favorite lady.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell it was a
Yeah,
rough
It was
day.
a tough day. You could-
And I said, it's really hard working for your boss.
Hmm.
And she said, tell me about it. And I encouraged her to get out of her truck. And I gave her a hug. I said, you're really important to us. You're really valuable to us. And we thank you for your service. We thank you for what you do for us. Because there's a lot about running our enterprise that we couldn't do if she doesn't deliver the mail. Checks come in the mail,
Yeah,
for crying
yeah.
out loud.
Yeah.
That's a holy moment.
Yeah.
It was a holy moment.
For sure.
And she teared up. Clue,
Yeah.
I reached her.
Yeah.
And there's a relationship building there. I don't know exactly where that's going. I don't need to know.
Yeah.
I'm available for that time,
Yeah.
for such a time as this, that time.
And
with
if
her.
you weren't, and I'm going to go back to your word, Elaine, possibility, if you weren't open to that possibility or had the buckets out, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
You might have missed it. You might have just gone down, said hello to the mail lady, gotten your mail and go back, and you didn't even know that you missed a heaven moment
Right.
that you could have had.
Yeah.
But let me just jump in really quick, and then I want to come back to the story. But I want to help our audience understand again, some of them that are from a faith-based perspective and that grew up in the church and they heard verses like, Galatians 5, where it talks about the fruit of the Spirit. But for a lot of us in the church world, that became a formula. How do you know if you're walking in the Spirit? Well, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Those are the fruit of the Spirit, right? But I love how your story is bringing life to that. I think that we've deadened. The Bible didn't. We did it, where we turned it into a formula. And it's like what you did is you exhibited love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control in that moment with that mail lady, which brought a piece of heaven. That's
Yes.
what the kingdom is.
Yep.
Every time we exhibit those fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, we're bringing a piece of the kingdom or a piece of heaven. And like you said, it's not the totality of it, but it's a picture of it.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a guy who got to spend a little time there.
We did a teaching years ago at a seminary, and one of the professors at the seminary you could tell he was not exactly happy with our presentation. And he said, so what's the difference between the presence of the Holy Spirit and a bubble of the kingdom of heaven? And you could tell his arms were akimbo. It's like, what's the difference? And I said, intensity. I mean, we've been in a place where the Holy Spirit, who is God, Holy Spirit shows up. When it's heaven, intensity. The intensity increases by a factor, multi. And that's part of the evidence. Is part of how we know. It's like, ooh, there's a lot more here than what we were thinking. But we're available.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of that is as well as to not be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. Well, what happens if I go up and I say, how are you doing? And they just, get offended or whatever it is. And it's kind of like, well, if you do it with the right heart, love, joy, peace, and on and on and on, then okay.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for the outcome.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a
I'm
great
responsible for my part.
Yep. We're responsible to do
process
what God put in front of us.
Exactly.
What's so interesting, though, Elaine, is I think, and you guys have talked to far more people about their stories just in your journey with this.
Yes.
But what I found with my own life and in some of the stories I've heard from other people, and you guys speak into this, of whether this is true or not, I found that most of the time that fear, it doesn't play out. Most of the time when I was like, well, what if I look stupid? What if they get upset? It's hardly ever happened to me when I've stepped forward. It's like, it's actually a really good experience for both of us.
Yeah.
And most people I've talked to is that way. You've talked to a lot of people about these bubbles. Do you find the same thing, that most of the time sure, we get it rejected at times, but that's not the norm.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yes.
And again, I think the motivation behind it, where your heart is with all of that, is huge.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it for yourself, or you're doing it because you think you've really got something to offer.
Yeah.
And that's the primary thing. You know,
Yeah.
the motivation here
Motivation's huge.
is the relationship between people
Yeah.
and with God.
Yeah.
It's both.
You know, what's kind of cool is I feel like we're having a bubble moment here. I really do. Like I
Amen.
said before, when I got goosebumps when you started describing it, the veil between heaven and earth is so, and I didn't have your experience, Steve, and neither did you,
Neither did
Elaine.
I.
Amen.
But yet I know that's true, that veil is so much thinner than we think.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I felt a
And
little bit when you were
available to
describing
us.
it. Yeah.
We realize that it takes courage
Yeah.
to follow the leading, and we've developed a philosophy of we don't really care about outcome. Outcome belongs to the Father.
Yeah.
Now, we're passionate about process.
Yeah.
And we have capacity. We
Yeah.
have capacity by God's grace
Yeah.
to extend love and care in places where you normally wouldn't expect love and care to be extended.
Yeah.
And we just do that as a routine. It's worth the risk.
It's worth the risk.
It's
I like that.
courage, but it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Because occasionally we get met and amazing things happen.
Mhm.
And we're in a place now where we're getting serious about telling our story.
Mhm.
And the more that we tell it, the more it develops.
Mhm.
And that's for chapter 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second,
We'll get there.
We'll get there, but there's something going on with this.
You guys are a great interview because we keep giving these teasers. There's no way our listeners are going to pass up on part 2.
Like,
we keep giving these teasers. You know,
Slide
I love
those promos in. Yeah, get them hooked.
I love that idea about being passionate about the process. And then it goes back to what you said before about not expecting, anticipating but not expecting. And again, what we do so often is when we become focused on the outcome, it's about expectations.
Yeah.
But when it's about the process, it's like, here I am.
And, you know, sometimes it's going to make a difference. Sometimes that process is about us.
Mhm.
And again, you're not looking at what the outcome is. It's, am I going to be
Yeah.
obedient? Am I going to be open? Am I going to be willing?
Yeah.
So it's a growth thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to start with a question for you, Steve, and then I'm going to throw my question out for you, Elaine, and I'm
Okay.
going to come back to you after Steve answers this. So, Steve, I want to ask you, we're just in the story part of this right now, so I want you just to share a little bit what you saw or felt or heard that heaven experience. I mean, you said it was just amazing and the beauty of it. So I want you to explain that a little bit. And then Elaine, after he does that, I want to come and say, okay, what was it like for you 10 years after this event when Steve comes and says, hey, guess what happened to me, by the way? I want to hear that story. So, Steve, first of all, give us a little glimpse of heaven. As we're wrapping up this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment on something you'll take away. All right, let's hop back into the remainder of the episode.
When you go to heaven, you are literally transported.
Mhm.
You go through a tunnel of light. You get there. It's like going to a different place. When you get there, you literally are pushed out.
Mm.
Heaven has weight. It has gravity. It has presence. And it's the 5 senses on steroids.
Mm.
So everything is pungent
Mm.
in smells. Everything is vibrant in terms of visual colors. And
I'm having a bubble moment again right now. I'm telling you, like I can't.
I love hearing this
wait.
over and over
I
again.
can't wait.
well, the thing that's so, for me, that was really important, and the biggest surprise was the passion. You feel the emotion of heaven,
Mm.
which, as I said earlier, is like being inside pure joy.
Mm.
I mean, for somebody that was raised in violence,
Mm.
it's the safest place I'd ever been.
Mm.
And it was part of why I'm thinking, I'm liking this. I'm liking this. I'll stay. This is good.
There was no part of you that wanted to leave that.
No. And Jesus is a paradox. He's this massively built person that is soft to the touch. You would think that he was a dock worker or a bodybuilder because, I mean, he's chiseled. And yet at the same time, he has really soft hands and he's a tenor, but he's very soft spoken.
I love how you said a paradox.
Well, because he's, it's kind of like it's not. He doesn't look like what the pictures were,
Yeah.
and it was the experience of being surrounded by heaven,
Yeah.
and the sun, and oh my gosh, I'd go back tomorrow. I'd go back in a heartbeat.
There was this Jewish idea in the Old Testament, right, when they were prophesying about the coming of the Messiah. And of course, they had it a little mixed up. They thought he was going to come and set up his kingdom here on earth and all those things, as some of us know if you've been in the church world. But they talked a lot about shalom, peace, and peace. It was a much more in-depth. Shalom is a much more in-depth word than we get in our English language.
Yeah.
It was holistic. It meant physical, emotional, spiritual, all of the things it incorporated. It was, and then the prophets talk about it. It's the lion laying down with the lamb and the child playing next to the cobra nest and no longer. And you felt that a little bit with the peace you're talking about. Like you had grown up in a violent, not feeling safe, staying at school so you didn't have to go home and deal with that. And now you're feeling this shalom that's probably almost undescribable.
Yeah, being inside pure joy. And there's no ebb and flow to it. It just is. It's omnipresent. And you felt seen and safe and held.
I think one of the descriptions that you've given in the past, that other than being inside pure joy, which is always touches my heart, but the other one is you said you felt absolutely held and absolutely free.
Yeah. That's a paradox again, isn't it?
There it is.
To be held, we usually think like it can be a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you hold too long, it's like claustrophobic or I'm not free, but you had both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
Did you have any, you talked about conversations with Jesus, and the last one, he says you have to go back, right? Those were the last words you heard. And you can't stay. And you heard a softness, a tenderness, almost a sorrow for that.
Yeah.
I've always thought
forlorn.
When people talk about Lazarus, the story of Lazarus in the New Testament, and they're like, well, that had to be one of the coolest miracles. I'm like, not for him. Like the poor guy had to come back, and you're similar.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you? He had to come back and die a second time.
Yeah, and they don't write very much about Lazarus after that. He gets that one story in the Bible, and after that, it's like, where'd he go?
Yeah.
It's part of the mystery of Scripture.
Yeah.
That says there's a whole bunch in the Bible that's not written about.
Yeah.
True nonetheless, but not written
for
about.
sure. And I think that's going to be part of the beauty someday of when we have plenty of time to just hear everybody's stories. I think again in that Revelation where it says the enemy was defeated by the word of their testimony and the blood of their lamb. And we always think of the blood of the lamb, but there's something about the word of our testimony, our stories.
Yeah.
And so maybe we'll get to sit down with Lazarus someday. You and Lazarus probably have a great time because you have a similar story in that sense.
Yeah, you got grave clothes, right? I got an injection. Jeez.
Yeah, listening to
Let's
what was it, Evil Woman
here.
or whatever. So can you tell us about maybe another, do you remember another conversation you had with Jesus? Did you ever talk about your story? Like what you came from?
Part of the conversation was everything is okay. That part of my experience in heaven was a life review and the brutality of it. And Jesus was there. It shocked me that Jesus knew all about it. He knew every story. He knew everything that went on. And he made it okay. And if he would do that for me, he'll do that for everyone. Everyone.
Yeah.
He's on record of going, I'll make it okay.
Yeah.
It is okay.
Yeah.
And also, things will now be different. I'm giving you marching orders. And that's for the second chapter.
Yeah.
Another promo.
Okay, good. Perfect. Audience, don't miss
new
part 2.
marching orders.
But wait, there's more.
Elaine, can I jump into that? I think our audience would love to hear this. So you guys get married. It's 10 years later, and I don't know. You could set it up however he comes and tells you, but all of a sudden you're privy now to the fact that your husband 10 years before spent some time in heaven with Jesus.
Well, it's interesting because over that 10 years, we're raising a family. We have 3 boys that we're raising, and so life is busy. And I always knew that there was something that he wasn't telling me. And he couldn't. I knew that. I just knew that I knew.
Yeah.
And it was okay. I don't know how better to say it. It was not a problem for me.
Yeah.
And, and then we had 3 boys growing up, and
You were
life
busy
was a little bit busy.
Yeah.
When he finally told me, what occurred to me, what it felt like was, it makes sense. It just makes sense. And I know that sounds naive. It sounds like I was clueless or something like that. But that is just the truth. It was just right. It's like, okay, I get it now. I really get it. And, he's told, we've had this conversation multiple times about, if I could go back now, I would. Doesn't mean that he loves me less at all. And although I cannot understand that to the depth that he does, I still get it, and I am okay with that. I don't want him to go. Yeah, you're mine.
Yeah.
Sorry. But I understand that. So when he says, I'd go back in a heartbeat, he means it.
Yeah.
He means it.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. So you kind of compile all of that stuff together of, life was busy. He wasn't telling me something. It was okay. And then when he told me, it all made sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that he says, I'd go back in a heartbeat, I'm all right with that.
Why would you be okay with that?
Because I've heard and talked to him enough times to understand what it was that he left.
So it's almost like you would say, well, if I experienced what you experienced, I would be saying the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. If me, Pat, was sitting here and I got to experience what Steve did, I'd be saying I'd go back in a second.
Yeah. As to the best that I can possibly understand that.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm going to have limitations. I haven't had that experience. Most people in this world won't have that experience. But part of the beauty of our relationship and what we're working with people is to say, I didn't have this experience, but I've learned. Just like everybody else can learn. Yeah. I can experience some of those bubbles, those moments of heaven. I can anticipate. I'm a whole lot less fearful than I used to be. All of those things. So it gives me an insight. It gives me an in.
Yeah.
And I've had time to do that. And that's what I want to share with people. That's what we want to share with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's wonderful.
So when I was discharged from the Navy finally as a disabled veteran, honorably discharged disabled veteran, I didn't think I was going to be disabled for very long. I mean, that seal-worthy mentality still.
I'll get through this. Yeah.
I'll get through this. Well, shoot, I was disabled for 10 years, and it took an act of God to restore me. And the real question then is, what are you going to do now? And what was beginning to happen in that my kids were starting to grow, and I didn't have the capability of playing with my kids.
Those 10 years because of your disability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have the vitality. I didn't have the capacity. I didn't have what it took.
Yeah.
My disability was present, and I couldn't play with my kids.
Yeah.
And God heard that prayer.
And then you said an act of God. Are we talking like
That's chapter 2.
That's chapter 2. Okay. You guys are such a great interview. You set it up perfectly. So let's do this. Let's wrap up this session. We're going to go to episode 2. Audience, you're not going to want to miss that when that drops for sure, because we're really going to get into, so what does this mean for us in the here and now? You went to the hereafter. Most of our audience probably believes there is a hereafter. I mean, I think there are different levels and different places in what they believe, but I think most of our audience will probably say, I think there's a hereafter. What does your story have to do with the here and now? And I think that's a big part of why you're telling it and why you're here. So we want to get there. Elaine, we do 2 truths and a lie. And I'm going to start with you, and then Steve will get you next time. It's a fun way for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So we've been listening to your story a little bit. Give me 3 statements. 1 will be a lie, 2 will be truths, and I'll try to guess the lie.
Okay. I wanted to be an FBI agent.
Okay.
I loved to eat shrimp. And I have held a 2.5-foot crocodile.
Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to go with the FBI is true. That one
is true.
Okay, good. I got it down to a 50-50 chance here. All right. Okay, so you want to be an FBI agent?
As a kid.
That was one of your dreams.
It was.
Yeah, okay. You know what? I'm going to say that, did you say you love to eat shrimp or you hate to eat shrimp? I'm going to say that is the lie. You actually hate shrimp.
Actually, I can't eat shrimp. I'm allergic to them.
Okay, so that's the lie?
That's the lie. You got it.
I got it.
This.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. I mean, I had a 50-50. This is how I got through school.
We'll have to give him
We'll
a
try
gold
another.
star.
We'll
Gold
try another
star. We'll
Yeah.
give him
Yeah,
a gold star.
I didn't get a lot of those in school, so I would be happy to take one now. Well, thank you so much. You're not going away because we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to film episode 2 that's going to drop audience later on, or if you're listening to it later, you're going to want to hear episode 2 right after this, so we'll be right back. Wow, what a powerful start to this 2-part conversation. Steve and Elaine share the reminder we all need to hear, that heaven is real and closer than we think. Don't forget to listen to part 2 on our next podcast drop, where we talk about life after Steve's return from heaven and the way they're living differently. We'll see you next time.